Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you all. If you could please make your way in. I know we love fellowship. If you can grab a seat so people can find a way. If you can just find your ways to the center and save some seats for other folks, because I know people are coming on in. I know, I'm already pushy. Welcome to our class today, Imitating Christ when Engaging in Difficult Conversations. My name is David Jung, and for those who don't know me, I am from Winnipeg, Canada. And I'll answer the next question. Where's Winnipeg, Canada? It's 7.5 hours north of Minneapolis. On to the next question. And Minneapolis is in the center of the United States. So for some of them, where's that? Yes, the number one question I get is, what state is Winnipeg in? And I already know we're going to have a challenging conversation. But I thank you so much for all taking the time out to be here. I know I have a bio. You can read all about our information on there. I have an hour to share some time with you. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know that many of us, we're getting to the point where we are psychologically not available because we're tired from all the lessons. And so what we find is, when everything's important in a conference, nothing's important. Because at the end of the time, you're like, what did you get out of it? Jesus? Love Jesus, and love people. So hopefully you get more than that. So I'm wondering if you could do this for me, if you take notes, if you use your phone or even the old school paper, you can write something down for me. Because when you come here, you have lots of expectations, especially when the word difficult conversations, you have expectations. And I can't meet them all, it's impossible in 1 hour. And so, why are you here? Maybe you write down, why are you here? What's the X you're trying to solve? Well, I'm here for difficult conversations, Dave. Now, what do you mean by that? What conversation? With mom, with dad, ministry person? This is the ILC. We're hoping to have leaders here, but even non-leaders, you lead something, even yourself somewhere. What do you mean by engaging a difficult conversation? What does it even mean Christ-like, right? I mean, you don't speak Hebrew, so what are we talking about? They had a different culture, different context. And so some of the principles we can use back from the New Testament, but in this new age, right, what does that even mean for us? So in a sentence, why are you here? I know some of us are going to write some things down online, welcome. And also, you're going to be watching this again and again when it's recorded. It's important to focus on why you're here so that it informs what you write down, what you pay attention to, and also it informs the questions that you ask perhaps even after the session if we have some time for that. But that X you're trying to solve, perhaps it's something that's causing you some angst or some consternation, or maybe you're here to prepare. Now, some of us here, you're really awesome at this stuff already. And the question would be, are you able to train someone to do this? Because we try to call it, you want to make what you do explainable, thus is transferable, and suddenly becomes sustainable in your ministry, right? There's this one brother or sister, the elder, some of these folks, they do this amazingly. When hey, bro, how do you do that? Just go up and have a great talk. Yeah, thanks. It's like, you're a great golfer, you just hit the ball. It's not so easy. And so when someone says, go have a difficult conversation, there's steps to this. And of course, when you can't explain it, you can't transfer it, you can't train someone. And so you may know a lot of this stuff, and you're so good at this, but can we take steps? And so today, hopefully, we have a few principles we can show. I say we because I sometimes have a partner. Myself and the Spirit will show you some of this stuff, all right? So you wrote down a few things. Why are you here? And so in context of that, here's a question for you. What is the most difficult conversation for you in leadership? What is the most difficult conversation? It's a rhetorical question for you to think about it. Does it have to do with talking about specific things or with a specific person? Perhaps at specific times and context. After COVID, after, what are we really saying? After some of the impacts of COVID, we're not our best selves. It's a great incubator for depression and anxiety. That's what it is. And when we're talking to people, we're maybe not talking to the same people that we talked to 2 years ago. They're different. They're shifted. And also talking on Zoom, it's challenging because there's people we've hired at the company that I work for. We've hired that I've never met before. And we pay them. We've never met them before. But can you imagine brothers and sisters you've known for years and years, and something shifted in them, and conversations that were just simple all of a sudden become difficult? So it could be a friend, could be a spouse, your children, could be. And so as we focus on leadership, part of the goal was to focus on the book of Colossians. And so some of the teaching would be coming out of there and how Paul dealt with the church in Colossae. And so the principles from there, you can pick up for your own life as well. And so for those of who's read through it and gone through it, there are many amazing teachers and many amazing classes that have gone through a lot of the history, a lot of the context of this. And so I kind of broke it down to the simple version. I'm not a big Bible teacher per se, but I love reading the Bible and learning about it and getting the overarching themes. So when you look through Colossians, Paul had to deal with some pretty big issues, and I kind of lumped it into two things. One was a relational issue, because it's one of those situations where he established, this church was one of the ones he didn't plant. He didn't have the strong relationships, where when he was leaving, they were crying and holding each other and, at the beach. It wasn't like that. He didn't know these people very well, except for a few emissaries that were in there. Also, what was happening in this situation was there were other teachers in there that started building deep relationships with people. And when you get that relational trust with people, if you teach them false doctrine, oftentimes when you trust somebody, you start believing anything that they say. And here's Paul having that problem. And so in Colossians chapter 2, verse 1, it says, I want you to know how much I am struggling for you and for those in Laodicea and for all those who I have not met personally. Verse 5, for though I am absent from you in body, I am present with you in spirit. That's another way of saying I don't know you. I don't know you very well. And it's not like, think about how challenging it was to connect with people on Zoom. Remember anybody, that's not your awesome. Even the most introverted, I'm a very high-functioning introvert. Even the most high-functioning introvert, over the last couple years for the professional company that I work for, I did over 380 workshops between 45 and 6 hours long. More than 3/4 of it was conflict resolution. It was hard to connect with people. Can you imagine trying to do that on a letter? On vellum? In a boat? 6 months it gets there? You think you got problems on Zoom? Oh, my internet connection's not working. Yeah? Well, my pen, the goat thing, is not working for me. Well, for him, he had to make a connection with people that were going through some challenging things, where people teaching false doctrines. Basically, they were saying, you need more than Christ. Christ is not enough. It's not enough. All the ICOC, we made some really great songs. We don't have one like the Christ is not enough. There's no song like that, right? Well, this goes against everything that Paul was trying to do across that part of the world. Whenever you have a church that starts teaching and practicing Christ is not enough, it is an opening door for everything. And I'm telling you that, I don't know if it applies to our world today. Do you see Christ is not enough? Oh, it does. Okay, just making sure. So you're trying to connect with people that oftentimes we have low trust because of whatever reasons, over the pandemic time or just relational conflicts or whatever it may be, and you're trying to land something really, really important. And Paul had to do that, and one of the big things was his relational challenges, for sure. Another thing was obviously the theological and philosophical issues that were going on, and I think smarter men than me are going to teach about this, but these false teachers, they were arguing that the Gentile Christians, the Judaizers, they were not saved, they were keeping the ceremonial law, all kinds of stuff that's too much to list right now. They were being infected with beliefs and practices that focus on all kinds of weird mysticism, worship of angels, you name it. Anything other than Jesus Christ. So it was Jesus Christ and you had to be circumcised. Jesus Christ and air miles and a gold watch, whatever it is, something. Jesus Christ, you had to be part of this club to be part of it. And it became a serious thing, and people were falling apart. And especially if you're as a leader, when you hear about heresy in the church, as a leader, I've been a ministry leader for about 30 years. And honestly, I get stressed out when I hear about this. Think about some of the things that you've heard through church as a leader. Oh, I got to go talk about this. And it's so challenging. And I want it to go away. I just do. I want the issues to go away. But listen to how deeply this church is being impacted. It says, see to it that no one takes you captive. Think of the words captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the basic principles of this world rather than on Christ. My original degree was in philosophy. In philosophy, in many ways, it's the way we describe how the world works as human beings, right? And theology, it includes God. And these hollow philosophies sound very, very cool until you press the fast forward button and it ends up nowhere. It's hollow and deceptive. And we fall into all kinds of stuff. And I'll tell you, North America, because the church is so quick to get information out, false teaching can spread so quickly. Do everybody see anybody lose it on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that? Once or twice, right? Yeah, totally. Especially some of these young people that are amazing people, but certainly it seems like when a lot of people are saying it, it seems more right? Or you're yelling louder, or if you're really unhealthy. Back in the day, if you wanted to come up here and stand, they'll evaluate you, and, they'll see if you're worth listening to. When you're behind a keyboard, it's hard to evaluate you. You don't know. Everybody sounds the same, right? At the end of the day, these folks are having this stuff 3D. And so when you're a leader, if you had to think about the two big challenges Paul had to do, he had to make that relational connection, and also deal with the issues. As a leader, where do you tend to focus? If you're honest, where do you tend to focus? As a leader, I tend to focus, and I try to go after the issues right away. I don't think very much about the relationships. Think about the last time you had to deal with some serious issue. Do you start off dealing with the friendship and the connection? Do you consider how deep your relationship is with this person? Or you just kind of go gangster on what you're going to talk to them about, right? I mean, that's what we do sometimes, right? And we don't know why. I also work as a therapist, and I've had clients that they don't even know I'm married, they don't know I have kids, because most of the time they pay me to talk about themselves. I mean, what did one brother say? I was at a different meeting. 95% of the time, we're thinking about ourselves, right? And so 5%, I mean, they want to know, my e-transfer for money. Other than that, they don't know much about me. And so oftentimes as leaders, we're focusing on something that may not be useful for the conversation, but we think is useful because it's what will relieve our pressure. I'm stressed out about this women's issue. I'm stressed out about this gender issue. I'm stressed out about all these different things. And I have to talk to you, because if I don't talk to you, I don't feel good. You see how that conversation is not going to start very well? Because it's just focused on me. Don't care where you're coming from, right? And so here's something interesting that I like to use, where I think about, when I think about a difficult conversation, it can be difficult because of three general things. One, it can be difficult because of the issue. It can be difficult because of the issue. Right now, if you had to think about what you wrote down in the beginning, the most difficult conversation for you, it generally has to do with the issue you're talking about. Whether it's something that's a little ambiguous, women's role, lots of egalitarian, complementarian, everything in between, or something completely outside the box. Role of the church, who's in, out of the ICOC, all this stuff. Who do we date? It's just, if we're not the only Christians, okay, what do we do now, right? I haven't dated for a while, married. I feel fired up about that. We date, but it's the same person every time. It's awesome. And she is in the ICOC, and she's a Christian. So a lot of elders in the front. They're like, oh, good. Most people don't ask questions about that. Think about the issue you're dealing with, and think about the last time you had that conversation. What did you consider going into it? Your facts, your arguments, counter-arguments, counter-arguments. You got it all covered, right? Everything. And most of us who are trained to deal with issues, we deal with conflict. We go after the issue right away. That's the issue. We start with that. So can we talk about this? We don't check the temperature. Another thing that makes a conversation difficult is the other person, right? It's always the other person. It's never me. It's always the other person. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. You'll see that in a second. We are trained to deal with the issues because we use all these websites you can find. We're even trained to deal with the other people a lot of times. We validate, assertive communication. Think about all the things we know how to do. And the counseling world teaches a lot of that stuff. And so you watch Oprah, Dr. Phil, and all their apostles, you'll see a lot of these tools that you can learn. And most of us in ministry, we're trained to deal with these things. But I'll tell you one thing, as I do conflict work all across the ICOC and the planet, but also I deal work with the world in mediation. I've trained hundreds, and I've been through hundreds of these mediations. The area that is the most neglected and least focused on is your own lens. It was like, that's so obvious. Let me tell you, I know way more than I do. Anybody here understand that? Who here does not know how debt works? Don't spend more than you have. Why would we need an MBA for that? Don't spend more than you have. How's that going for you? Right? Don't eat that. It's not low fat. It's very bad. You know what? I think a little piece would be okay. Ends up being the whole thing. Like, why is that? It's not because I don't know, because I do less than I know. Look, if I didn't learn any more about Jesus, I could probably live out the rest of my Christianity. A lot of us are in this room are able to do that because we know way more than we do. You know, when I fight with my wife, it's mainly my fault, but I take all my education, all that stuff I put out, and I throw it out the door because I am right. That's just the way it is. I feel right, therefore I am. We call it emotional reasoning. It's wonderful. But here, you can be elder, brand new Christian, whatever, all the spaces in between, old Christian, new Christian, medium, rare. It doesn't matter. We do way less than we know how to do. Only later on we're like, oh, wow, that did not work at all. You know, oftentimes we are really in trouble because we are trying to control stuff that we can't control. And when we don't get it, our lens is messed up. You know, I like donuts. You're thinking, what's this with a donut? I like visuals. And so when I start thinking about Paul's situation, right, he had to do an assessment. I don't think he used a donut, but this is easy for us to remember. When you think about the things that you can control, I use that to represent, you know, the little tiny hole in the donut. You imagine sitting down with yourself or other people and thinking, what are the things I can actually control going into this conversation? You know, the actual donut, things I can actually influence. Not control, but I can influence. And then outside the donut, the biggest space of all, into infinity, is things I cannot control, things I cannot influence. You know where the problem comes from? When I start to jam stuff I can't control and into the part where I think I can control it. Think about the last time you had a conversation. You're trying to control something you can't control, and you lose your mind. But it doesn't matter, because I'm going to try harder. I'm going to jam more stuff into this tiny little place called control. Next time you're losing your mind and it's not going very far, ask yourself, you know what? It's time for a donut. Let me take a look at this donut assessment. I know it's not a professional assessment, but it's easy for us to remember, because I like making this stuff accessible. There's nothing much more accessible than a donut. Thinking about this, you have donuts? You have them down here, right? Yeah, just making sure. In Canada, it's a big thing. Thinking about what I shared before, what makes a conversation difficult? The issue. Can you control the issue? Not much. It's coming your way. Coming to a theater near you again and again, part 12. You can't control the other person. Yes, I can. Well, it's kind of illegal sometimes. You can't do that. You can't control them. You can't. Can you control yourself? Yeah, you can. Right? Talks about, you know, it's better to conquer yourself than a city, right? Yeah, that's really awesome. Not when I'm doing it, though. It's not working for me. So when I start thinking about what this is, most of us understand, or maybe you've heard of this thing called emotional intelligence or relational wisdom. That's the Christianized version of it. This is a thing. It's not some mumbo-jumbo from the world. There are Christians that have researched this stuff out, and they realize that for leaders, it is the number one measure of your success. It is not IQ. It's not. It's actually EQ or EI or relational wisdom. And there are 3 parts to it. And this is simple. I mean, there are people that are rolling over in their psychology graves, but this is a simplified version of it. It's your ability to be self-aware, like what's going on with me, so I can control it. And secondly, can I manage what's going on? It doesn't matter if I know I'm a raving lunatic, right? If I can't control it, then that's a problem, right? But using that self-awareness, using that self-management to be able to manage the relationship around me. Most people, they really do believe, and including myself, they think they have a lot more self-awareness than they do. I'm yelling at a person at the top of my lungs to tell them to stop yelling because it's not effective. Right? I've changed this case to protect the guilty, but I work with court mediation in Manitoba, and this one woman, amazing, mom of 3 kids. Man, a pickup truck cut her off. She's not a big woman, but cut her off. And man, I'll tell you, you know what she did? She chased this pickup truck up, going at 60 miles an hour through school zones, just to show these 2 big construction worker guys how wrong they were. Of course, she got picked up by the cops because you shouldn't be doing that, right? And she's sitting there all sane, and so why would you do that? Because they endangered my kids. So we're like, yeah. She goes, I know, I can see that now. Why? So you're driving with your 3 screaming kids in the back. Did you not notice them screaming? No, because she was not aware how upset she was. And on top of this, what would you have done? Like, are you a Charlie's Angel or something? Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to knock them out? Like, what are you going to do? Right? So these 2 guys are scared to death of her because she's crazy mom in the back in her minivan chasing. Like, but you know what happened? She was super smart, but she lost her mind. It's because she wasn't aware of what was going on, and she did all this unhealthy stuff. I know this is just for people I know, but I don't know if it happens in here, right? But when we have a difficult conversation, this is the issue, this is what I get advice on, it's them, I want to know how to handle them. Rarely do I say, okay, what about me? Yeah, I get it, David. I have issues. So we won't deny it, or even if we do, people will help us understand very quickly that it is us. So we won't deny it, but we'll minimize it. Well, yeah, I mean, I get a little me, but a whole lot of them, though. But also, we may move from the denial to minimization, then we move to blame shifting. Okay, fine, I am that way, but they made me that way, right? Nobody makes us this way. Nobody made her chase them around all through Winnipeg like that. It was insane. I remember reading about it in the newspaper. I was like, I never knew I'd be working with it. I was like, oh, you're that lady. Ooh. Hope I don't cut you off, right? But at the end of the day, I started thinking about what does this mean when we have a difficult conversation. I bet you most of us can write a pretty solid essay on what we need to do during difficult conversations. I bet you could, if you've been in leadership, especially great leaders. But why do we get this chance to sit down with you and say, hey, how come you missed all that stuff? It's not because they don't know. It's in the moment their emotions get hijacked and they lose their minds and they're chasing construction workers through zones to keep their kids safe. That doesn't make any sense, does it? Do you know that we've probably done a lot of stuff pre-recordings, right, of videos that we're not proud of and we get in trouble for it. But today, you try losing your mind like that, oh, you'd be very, very famous. Very famous. In Starbucks, and we call them Karens and Kevins, You think they sat down in the morning and said, I'm going to have a bowl of Cheerios, slice of cheese, I'm going to ruin my life. You think that was their plan? No way. No way. Disciples, when we have difficult conversations, if we can't figure our own lens out, I don't care about the issue. I don't care about the other person. We will invalidate that conversation immediately the minute we lose our minds. I like saying lose your cookies. Back in the, remember Cookie Monster? Yeah, you don't know. Some of you don't have a clue. But Cookie Monster was a blue monster, and I don't think they allow him anymore because of diabetes and all that stuff. But he would eat his cookie, and when someone took his cookies, he would completely lose. And that's what would happen. And you see some of the calmest people, but they get triggered, they lose their minds. I'll tell you, I love Jesus' example. Just imagine what you would do. In the law, Moses commanded in John 8, okay, Jesus' approach with this challenging situation. Adulterous woman, about to be stoned because she was adulterous. Somehow they didn't catch the man that was with her, but somehow they were trying to trap him. It says, in the law, and these Pharisees and everybody's attacking him, in the law, the Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say? They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. I want you to think about this situation where everybody's on you to make a decision and you're about to have a difficult conversation that can lead to her death or yours or both. Anybody have a conversation like that? Listening to Andy share and Sean share? Yeah, they and the brother from Ukraine, yeah, here, middle Winnipeg, not so much. I don't think so. But here's Jesus. He had so much control. He didn't even bother with the issue. He didn't bother with the people picking up rocks. He didn't go, yeah, you better stop it. He was just calmed the temperature down. And I don't even know what he wrote on the ground, but I'll tell you, man, whatever it was, his relational intelligence, his wisdom, it creates that space for him to be calm and collected. It creates that space for him to respond and think through. I mean, I know he's God, but sometimes we give him, like he wasn't human at all, of course. You don't think he freaked out a little bit? Like, oh boy, here we go, right? But he had that space to calm down. You're like, oh, David, this is so simple. Simple, not easy. Remember debt? You got it, right? Yeah, no, we don't. It's very hard when the new thing, ding, 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 buy me, right? Like, no way. He had that relational wisdom to respond rather than to react. I have been fired from jobs, and I had to recuse myself because I know this, but I didn't do it. You know, sometimes I go in and they don't want me to mediate because they want their way, and they'll find some way to amp me up, man. They'll find my buttons, they'll look me up on Facebook, and they'll say something, and and that's what happens. That's why we use two mediators. Remember one time I was sitting there with my co-mediator, and she was starting to lose her cookies a little bit, and I just put my hand out, just pushed her knee. She said, "Stop doing that." I'm like, "Stop doing that." And she was like, oh, I got it. She's got it now. Because she doesn't know what she's doing. You're losing us money. Like what are you doing, right? We're going to lose the contract. And I've had people do that for me. So my question would be, if we're imitating Jesus, that's enough for me to pretty much get through conflict resolution for my whole entire life. Because when I'm calm, I know what to do. See, it's not the issue. It's me. It really is me. No, David, you don't know the other person. You know what? You don't know you. Do you see what I say, right? So when I think about Jesus, he's so amazing that in the end, he let them rattle on, and he came up with a really amazing solution. And Jesus straightened up and asked her, after all the people went away, he dealt with it, right? He even dealt with the woman. Woman, where are these people, right? Has no one condemned you? He says, no one, she said. Then neither do I condemn you, Jesus declared. Go now and leave your life of sin. And so I didn't even focus on the Pharisees, because people talk about these people all around. Jesus sent them away. Whoa, mic drop, made everybody, no sin, go away. Freaked them all out. But it's the woman now. How do you feel about the people that has caused you all these things where you almost get killed because of their sin? I don't feel about greater. After the Pharisees and the Sadducees, all these people leave, I put, hey, listen, now, we need to have a talk in myself. Jesus, I need to have a talk with you. But he was so amazing. He connected what he corrected. When we correct, sometimes we disconnect. That's it. Like we're ready to go, right? It's amazing how he did that. His power to relationship manage, he kept cool all the way through. If you have anything in conflict resolution to worship about Jesus, that's it right there. His ability to stay calm and collected. I know you think, come on, David, this is so... No, but I'm telling you, this is the big moneymaker for conflict resolution, people. To get the emotions calmed down. What are you really arguing about? What are you really talking about? Sometimes I sit with one half of the room and the other half of the room, and they're in the same situation. I'm like, the way they describe it, it seems like it's completely two different situations. But when they calm down, there's a lot of, oh, is that what you were thinking? Is that what you mean? And so I like to make this joke. Some of you have been in my classes. You've seen things like this. Explain to me what it means, okay? The chicken is ready to eat. Anybody? The chicken is ready to eat. For those who don't, please don't spoil it for people. What does that mean? The chicken is ready to eat. You're trying to eat some chicken because you just had lunch. The chicken's hungry. How many people immediately saw it as the chicken's hungry? How many people saw it as immediately that you're hungry? Okay? A simple statement can be interpreted twice. People that live on farms have had chickens. You think of it two ways. People in the city, why would you own a chicken? It doesn't make sense. Because the only version is cooked or fried. There's only versions of it. Can you imagine getting that messed up with someone's pet chicken? But you said the chicken's ready to eat. Yeah, not like that. So you might think, wow, what does it have to do with life? Hey, brother, I need you to be more respectful. Sister, you need to dress more wholesome. Look, what does that mean? Look, what does that mean? And we don't ask, and we lose our minds. Even now, we have people, I voted for this person. Do you even know why they voted for this person? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't care, because I can mind read. I know everything about you. Problematic, right? So I want you to do an exercise with me, please, if you don't mind. I want you to think about the person that is the most difficult for you. Write down some words. How would you describe them? Remember, we're disciples in here, so write down the words. You can describe them. But be honest, though. What are some of the words you use to describe them? Maybe you wouldn't talk to them out loud in mixed company, but maybe you talk to your wife or your spouse. What do you talk to your spouse about? Yeah, they're that. Your safe space. What do you say about them? What do you say about them? People got a list of words, right? Anybody write awesome in there? No, right? Not in there? Okay. So can you imagine this workshop being viewed many months from now? And I ask the same question. I know it's hard for you to believe, but just imagine. They picture the difficult person in their mind as you. Ridiculous. I understand. There are no difficult people in the room. Can you imagine they picture you? What words would they write down about you? Awesome. Full of grace and mercy. It's unfair God gave one person so much talent. I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't know. What you don't know what you write. Let me tell you, when I do workshops a lot of times, I will tape a piece of paper around the wall and everybody gets to write it down. And man, you should see the two lists, okay? When you compare the list. One side of the list, long, extensive words and pictures and animals to describe the person, okay? That other side, 2, 3, well, a lot of weird, there's hardly anything on there. Why? Because I don't think of myself the way they think of me. And I don't understand why they're freaking out when I'm coming to. Why? What's wrong? Because I judge others by their impact on me. I don't care about their intent. But I judge myself by my intent. I don't care about my impact. I'm like, it's just a flesh wound, man. Come on. Everybody makes a mistake. You know, we have a saying, a rock does not remember as a window. A rock does not remember as a window. If you're a rock going through a window, what window? The window's like, hey. It's a big difference. And so oftentimes when it's convenient, we're the rock. When it's convenient, we're the window, but we're never the rock. No. But even if I am not, I'm a little rock. Well, I didn't even mean to. He threw the rock, right? At the end of the day, how do the lists compare? Oftentimes, you might see the lists are very similar. They call you stubborn. You call them stubborn. No, but that's ridiculous. How can I be stubborn? I don't know. It's the way they see the world. But that's stupid how they see the world. But you see how that doesn't work? That's what I do to sit down and say, well, can you understand why they say that? And so when I start thinking about it, when I say the difficult person, who do you think of right away? Them. But who's the difficult person really? That's right. Both of us. Very rarely. I don't care if you got a degree in it. We know more than we do. And the first thing I think about in combat or difficult conversation, that person's difficult. Why is this so important? It's because it shifts the way we look at the person. Do you think if we shift the way we look at the person, it might change the conversation? Just a little bit. Just shift a little bit. Can you imagine before going into any difficult conversation, do this exercise. This is who I'm going in as, hero, and then villain, blah, 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 all about them. Versus taking a look at the list, they see me as a villain. They don't see me as the hero that I think I am. And all of a sudden, it helps us go in a little more gently. You know, I think somebody mentioned this analogy of a porcupine. You know, porcupines, right? There's lots of porcupines around. You know, so porcupines, they're not conducive to being hugged. So how do porcupines make other porcupines? You ever wonder about that? I mean, not too much about it, but you gotta drop your quills, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So when we're having difficult conversations, one way to drop your quills is to see that you're just as prickly to them as you are. You're both to each other. But if somebody's got to do something, you might think, wow, this is like Christianity 101. But you know what, though? We haven't solved this problem. We haven't. I'll tell you, when we start thinking about Jesus, thinking about his principles through the Bible, we see them everywhere. I mean, you think about this. An offended brother is more unyielding than a fortified city. And disputes are like the barred gates of a citadel. Do you ever try to talk to somebody that hasn't let their gates down? It is impossible. Anybody knows military, you don't rush a fortress with the same amount of men. You're going to lose all your people. It is a bloodbath to rush a fortress. You know, I think another way of saying that is, don't rush a fortress. You got to get people to open the gates. Now, there are times when you need to kind of go in. But when we grow in our relational wisdom, our EI, we help each other. We really do. We model it, we help each other, and it helps us deal with conflict. And so what does it have to do with Paul and Colossians? Because I read through the whole book, and I saw it a couple of times, and I looked at it from a very different point of view. I looked at it from a relational point of view. Remember, his big issues with the relational side of it and the bigger issues. So we have kind of a graph that I like to use. There are people that are, there are times where we're very high task focused, high goal focused per se, and there's times we're high relationship focused. Sometimes you get into fights perhaps with your spouse. We're going on vacation. Yeah, I planned a water skiing, mountain climbing. We're going to climb this and we're going to break a record over it. And they're like, I'm going to sit down and read a book, right? And you have that mismatch. Well, sometimes we go into a conversation, the difficult conversation, I'm going to get this done. Sometimes we go into a relationship, if we don't consider the relational dynamic and we try to get it done, how does that work generally? It never works very well. Paul, he could have been very high goal focused and low relationship focused. This is Paul the apostle. Think of the power that he could have brought into the relationship. He could have brought in that, I'm an apostle of Jesus. Who else got converted on a road, man? I'm what I'm normally born. I'm a Pharisee of Pharisees. I'm the OG. I'm awesome. How many churches you plant? Laid it out. Boom, 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 boom. Other power. He can reward, he can punish. You know how many times Paul came in? You want to bring in a whip? Wow, he had those powers. What other power did he have? He was an expert in all things that these people, according to the Torah, according to this and this and this, he memorized everything. But nowhere in the book does he use that power. Before, what he does, he has a very high relational focus and a high goal focus. He cared a lot about the relationship with them. Why is that? It's because he took the time to affirm them, to care about them, and you'll see it in the next little bit. When you see the letter a certain way, I picked out as much as the relational words, the positive words, the words that affirm them throughout the book, and it's a lot. If I were to write a letter to deal with the issues, it would not be filled with so many words from a man so emotionally intelligent that he knew that if I don't break down that fortress in a righteous way for them to open the gate for me, I will get nowhere because the teachers had the high ground there. The false teachers had the relationship. You go in like that, it's not going to work. Now, I'm not saying you never have that moment where you got to storm the castle, but that should not be your only option. Because we say this in conflict. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That's not going to work. Unless you don't care about who's inside the fortress. That doesn't work with your wife so much, or your husband, or your children, or your church, or people you want to see. It doesn't matter in the corporate world. They don't have to like each other. They can even hate each other, just not at work. That's fine. In the parking lot, they can do it off company property. They can do whatever they want. In Jesus, it's very different. It's one of the biggest things I had to learn. So look at Colossians chapter 1. Listen to these words in orange. Why did he include these words? Grace, peace. He's describing these people. I thank God for you. I heard of your faith, love, hope. Epaphras was their relational connection in there. Why would he name this guy? He told us about you. That means he asked questions. How awesome are these people? Yes, they're following heretical teaching. Some of them are doing some really squirrely stuff. But what did he do? He's not stopped praying for them. I want you to bear fruit. I want you to grow. I want you to be strengthened. I want you to endure. I want you to have patience. We share an inheritance. You receive things. You're redeemed. You're forgiven. These are the people following false teachings. These are the people that would elicit a need for a letter. How much do I fill my conversation that's difficult with those thoughts? Because if I do, like Paul, things are going to happen. This is a very relational letter. What else does he say? He says, the words that he used to describe the difficult person for them, these are the words he used to describe the people being difficult. How different are they than my words? Can you imagine the next time I say, hey, how would you describe your difficult person? Filling it with words of love and kindness. I'm not saying to ignore the fact that, they're doing all kinds of bad stuff. But if it's evenly filled out and I'm full of grace with them, I'll tell you, the way a conversation starts, it usually is the way it ends. John Gottman, the therapist, said that. And so I started thinking about this. In Colossians chapter 2, he says, I want you to know how much I'm struggling for you. Not struggling with you, struggling for you. You see the difference? He uses words to combat, but the combat is you and I are on the same side of the table, fighting the problem, not you. There's a big difference between that. And also, he's saying words like, I'm encouraged in heart, we're united in love. That's my purpose for you. So sometimes when I go into a conflict, difficult situation, I'm not there to bring them to their senses. I'm there to bring them to their knees, if I'm honest. I'm there to bring them to their knees. Well, a little to their senses while I'm bringing them to their knees. That's not the same thing. I'm going to win over them. And the problem is, when people feel that, they resist. I got Todd here, very awesome brother. If he had a $100 bill in his hand, and I try to take it, do you think he's going to let go? Or do you think he's going to squeeze harder? He's going to squeeze harder. He just is. And so that's not the best way to approach. It might be, hey, Todd, man, you're looking great today. Oh, hey, awesome. Hey, bro, I really think you're a really generous man. And I'm wondering, do you have any money for me? It's very different than, hey, give me your money. One, I'm convincing him that I'm worth to give to. The other one's robbery. It's a little different. So when I started thinking about this, our view of them will inform what we do next. Is that not true? When you're driving, don't you look? You're supposed to look when you're driving. If not, you're like, whoa, like that's what happens. Well, if I'm looking at them, and this is what it looks like, okay? I'm really kind and wonderful to them. Then when I'm open to my discipleship partners, isn't that incongruent? I'm open with what I really feel, and this is the way I act. That's the problem. I don't think Paul was faking it. I don't think Jesus was faking it. It's very hard to do this. But when we get a chance to do this, it's one of the most amazing, transformative things in marriage, with our kids. Can you imagine putting the lens of this child as a loser on your head? I don't know why they feel like a loser all the time. I don't know, because that's the way I see them. And as Jesus, as so many brothers have shared and brothers, sisters have shared, Jesus, he's the lens that God sees us through. That's awesome, don't you think? He doesn't see me. Thank God he doesn't see me. He sees Jesus. And that's what Jesus is for me. As I go through more scriptures, listen to what Paul says more about. He's God's chosen people. He says they're holy. They're set apart. No matter how messed up they're holy. They're loved. And he tells them, this is what you're supposed to act like: compassionate, kind, humble, gentle, and patient, bearing with one another, forgiving, and over all the virtues put on love. He describes the quality of the relationship, but he modeled that quality for him. Once again, it's very difficult for me to tell people to be loving when I'm acting incredibly unloving toward them. And I've lost many Christmas cards over the years being bad for folks. I have. And I have many people that I have wronged. But when I understand that, I can do better, and hopefully I can be forgiven. Even to the end of the very letter, how does he end off? He talks about Tychicus being a dear brother, Onesimus being a dear brother, or Epaphras, the one that, he was the connection in there. What does he say? Who is one of you, always wrestling in prayer for you. He talks about the most amazing thing. Can you imagine transforming so much? Even the most difficult person, you can say to them, brother, I know you have your challenges, but I hope for you. I have faith in you that God can change something. The more I think God's going to do something, the more gentle I am. When I don't think God's going to do anything, I don't do it God's way, man, I'm just, and I'm grinding, and I've been there. I do a lot of work around the ICOC, and I have a few elders that just show me the way sometimes. Because I can get pretty crunchy. I can get a certain way, man. I don't know if Walter's in here, but Walter has a way of helping me out. Very directly. I don't get subtle. Very directly. And I'll tell you, my heart is always softened when I have to see people the way God sees them. You might think, David, this is so ridiculously simple. Once again, I bet you if you sit down with me, we can poke holes in that you don't do it. That when we don't do it, I don't care what the issue is. So at the end of the day, when we start thinking about this, Paul used this relational wisdom through his whole letter to influence his audience. Read the book of Colossians again. Look at all the relational words that he uses to a church that literally he did not know. The issues were huge, impactful to that church, but yet he spent all this time connecting with himself to make sure that he loved these people deeply. Something that I use in the middle of conversations, I use it quite often, as I use the thermometer. First of all, my life, I have gotten less spiritual being here. It's like 1,000 degrees here. It's so hot. I just can't, I think I feel less saved, I use this temperature, I'm telling you, I come from minus 50, Fahrenheit and Celsius. That's what it meets, okay? Here, it's just no good. I was going to wear pants because you want to look up. I just can't, man. So there's my legs. Here it is, okay? So I use temperature here to show you something. The conversation I have with this person that's difficult, it should always stay in the warm zone. And when I'm self-aware, I always start to know when it gets a little cool. Do you ever have that with your spouse? Okay, that's fine. That's very cold. You're like, whoa, did you feel that? You know what I mean? No, everything's just fine. Like, you probably need to stop topic, issue, put that down and say, better check myself, what happened over here? Because I'm going to use my relational wisdom to warm that thing back up right away. What if it gets hot? It's a lot more clear when it's hot. Yeah, it sounds something like that. But at the end, I got to use my relationship wisdom to cool it down and just keep it warm. Do you know how hard that is to keep that conversation in that happy zone where people are still listening? It is so hard because we got to keep moving at the speed of trust, nice and slow. But what about me? Nope, I'm very issue-oriented. Bang, 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 bang. Here's 14 sub-points. We got to deal with all that. Then we deal with you. Here's all your issues. Not checking at all. If the person's checked, they have left the building. Well, I really encourage them at the end. You lost them halfway through the conversation. They didn't hear any of it. And so when somebody comes back and says, you didn't say that to me, they didn't hear you anymore because the conversation got so cold or the conversation got so hot. You don't listen. Just picture that next time you're having a conversation with somebody. Watch that conversation. You'll be like, wow, if you're not tired having a difficult conversation because you're watching, you're not doing it the right way. Paul measured the temperature of this room, and what he did was he put those words in to make sure through every correction there was some type of connection happening all the way through. I don't know if all the letters are like that in that terms of percentage-wise, but Colossians is a big letter for that. You might have some folks here saying this to me, but David, you don't know the other person. Sometimes that's true. I don't know them, and you're right. And you've tried everything in your toolbox. Here's a scripture for you. It is possible, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. You might go, yeah, I know that passage already, David. Okay? But that passage doesn't come to life until I start thinking about what this means for me. Because remember, what can I control? What can't I control? What can I influence? And I'll tell you, when we try to influence things that we can't control things we can't control, it becomes problematic. So, what's this? It's grass. What color is it? No. It's blue. Right? Tell you a story that I heard, really cool story. There was a donkey running around skipping. Grass is blue, grass is blue, grass is blue. Okay? The tiger, listening to a couple of this, you know what? He didn't want to say anything, but said, no, donkey, it's green. Donkey's like, no, it's blue, it's blue, it's blue. Tiger's like, look, I can't do the kill option here. So arguing back and forth with the donkey that the grass is green. Donkey's like, it's blue, it's blue. The tiger's so ticked off now. Some of you heard this story. You know what happens? They go take it to the lion, the king of the jungle. Walking in there, got a problem here, right? And the donkey's like, yeah, grass is blue, giving his big case for it. And the tiger gives his big case for it being green. And the lion's like, yeah. So donkey, so indeed, you believe the grass is blue? Well, you may go. Thank you. Tiger's like, well, okay, what is happening? What is happening here? And he goes, I have questions, because you punished for silence for 3 days. The Tiger's like, okay, can I ask one question, please? Like, just one question. Yes. What color is the grass? It's green. Tiger's super confused now. Look, I'm sorry, what? Because why am I being punished? You're not being punished because the grass is green. You're being punished is because you know it's green. And you would entertain such a foolish argument with somebody because you're a dignified tiger arguing with a donkey. The original version calls donkey something else. You figure it out, okay? You figure it out, all right? So somebody's not happy with that, but okay, in the end. So the reason you're being punished is because you're arguing with a person that only wants to argue with their position. They don't care about the truth. You know the second reason why First of all, because you know. And the second reason is because you wasted your time. First is because you are arguing something you know is true, and you're wasting my time. So for you, the grass is blue. Good for you. If they're not going to listen, and I can't throw everybody out, I'm going to try my best. And in the end, why am I going to do this? Because I'm going to look just like the donkey. That's fine if you're a donkey. Be the best donkey you can be. But if you're a tiger and you're acting like a donkey, that's when all the lions are like, you are an idiot. And so at the end of the day, if I have emotional intelligence and I'm starting to look, I don't think this argument's going anywhere, but I will proceed to argue anyway. All of a sudden, the disciple, you're going back and forth, showing each other videos back and forth, affirming each other, like, never goes anywhere. And sometimes I sit there going, you are wasting my time. You're wasting your leader's time. You're wasting time. There's other things we can do with our time. So how is this time, going back to the original question you asked yourself, changed your vision of what dealing with difficult folks looks like? But Dave, you didn't talk about the issue. You know how to talk about the issues already. You can go on YouTube sites, you know how to deal with the other person. Rarely do we look at ourselves and go, am I being a tiger or am I being a donkey today? Am I being a tiger or a donkey today? See, here's a question for another for us as we're thinking about this vision change for us, right? Should it inform our actions? Who do you need to have a difficult conversation with? How's relational wisdom, while having a difficult conversation about the issue, how will you use this? And who's going to help you with that? Because I'll tell you, it's one of the most difficult things to train and learn. But it's possible. A lot of this information can be found in a book called The Emotional Intelligence of Jesus. Really good book. Cool stuff in there. Relational Smarts for Religious Leaders. Oswald Jacobson. They tie into a lot of stuff Daniel Goleman does about emotional intelligence. Really, really cool stuff. I've taken a workshop with this next gentleman. He's a really interesting cat. He is a lawyer, a social worker, weird, and a mediator. But he wrote a book about some folks that it's not about cutting them off, but it's being aware so we can shepherd these folks in our church. It's called 5 Types of People That Can Ruin Your Life. Yeah, not a page turner IPI doesn't sell it for some strange reason. I have sold this guy, I'm telling you, 1 billion books. So Bill, good for you. Taken workshop with this guy. It is one of the most amazing books, and what it is, it allows you to be able to see the world a little differently and help some of these folks to be able to perhaps do better in our churches, converting them, helping them see God. And once identifying, it's really, really cool. Also, if you need to find me, I'm pretty accessible. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. Also, I'm part of the ICOC Peacemakers program. You probably hear about it on and off. Find me, text me, email me, whatever. And I usually answer questions. I'm pretty good with this stuff. You might think, well, will you get back to me? I will. Or I might say, hey, refer to page 37 on the book I just mentioned. Okay? So, going back to what you originally came here for, did we even move the needle even a little bit closer for you to kind of say, I think I really need to take a look at how I deal with conflict. I'm not saying I don't look at the other person. I'm not saying I don't look at the issues. But if you don't deal with you, the only thing in the donut you can control, that's the first place I'm going to look. What have you done? What do you need to take ownership of? If you find you need to take ownership of nothing, then Lord Jesus, you've already arrived. Because it must be you. Because it's the only person that you can say that to. You know, my mother-in-law, I love her, man. She has this analogy that I'll close with. One disputant, another disputant. Who hit who first? Who hit who first? Okay? And I went, yes, they're both at fault. Start thinking about this as a disciple, thinking, wow, isn't this the embodiment of humility and love? And hopefully in our movement, when we learn more and more of this stuff, it helps a little bit in Bible studies, believe it or not. It helps a lot in our discipling and our guidance. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time. And also, I think we have about 10 minutes for questions if you have any. And also, if you have, you can look up and find some of these things, okay? So I will take a question or two. Also, I'm up here if you need to talk to me, because I think our next session is like way down the road. So thank you, everybody. Is that good? Oh.